Hi, this is Phil, and I'm here to tell you all about the Capes and Lunatics Patreon. Don't miss out on our comic book creator interviews, including our monthly Chichester chats with comic book legend DG Chichester, superhero movie brackets in our search for the worst comic book movie of all time, and many, many more specials, all completely uncensored. Access starts for $3 a month, full video when you pledge $5 a month. Check out the link in our show notes or go to patreon.com/CapesandLunatics. Hope to see you there. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Unlimited Justice. I knew when we started this Justice League and Justice Society show, there was one name I wanted to on my list. I'm like, we have to talk to this man, of course. It's Mr. J.M. DeMatteis. Hello, sir.
Hey, how are you?
So, there's Will. You're 1 minute late, Will.
I was thinking this was 12 noon, but it is 12 noon Eastern time.
Yeah, you're
Central time, so apologies.
All right. No problem. We just started, so. All right, Mr. J.M. DeMatteis. Because I think that one of the last times we talked, like you love all these characters, like Spider-Man, and we talked Captain America, but I think you said pretty much your whole life you were a huge fan of the Justice League, correct?
Yeah, from the time I can, earliest memories of reading comics, yeah.
A
little kid, what is, if you love superheroes and suddenly there's a book where they're all together, how could you not love that? I mean, it's just, and then it's not just any group of superheroes, it's Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman and all those guys. So, as long as I can remember, I love the Justice League.
So was that always on your bucket list once you started writing? You're like, one day I will write Justice League.
No. It's funny. No, I don't know if anyone's ever even asked me that. No, because, team books are really hard. It's hard enough to write a good book about a one main character, let alone find the balance with a massive team of characters. Although, it just reminds me, when I was about 19, DC started an apprenticeship program where, random schmoes like me could just send in work, and if they liked your work, they take you into this apprenticeship program and teach you how to write comics. I don't know how long it lasted. I think that's how David Michelinie broke into the business. So I decided I was going to write a sample script, and I don't have it, so I couldn't tell you anything about it. I actually wrote a Justice League script. And I think about it now, it's like, what was I thinking? If I should have written like a 5-page story about one guy as opposed to a 22-page story about all these characters. But I did do that, so I guess that love of Justice League, called me on. But really, no. I always preferred working on single character books. Even when I wrote did the Defenders at Marvel for like 3 years, but Defenders was a great book because you could play with that format any which way. So you'd bring the team together, but then you could do 3, 4, 5 issues that just focused on 1 or 2 characters for months, and then you'd bring them together and do some big thing, and then you'd go off and tell solo stories again. But when you're doing the Justice League, you got to have that crowd there all the time.
Well, I think if there's one person you would love to write a solo about, it's probably is Martian Manhunter your favorite or one of your favorites? Because it seems like he's like the thing that always pops up in any of your runs. Yeah, in any of your runs, there's Martian Manhunter's always there, it seems.
Yeah. I did a Martian Manhunter solo series back when we were doing JLI. I did with Mark Bazra, a 4-issue series. But yeah, I love that character. One of the fun things about doing Justice League Infinity was getting to write him again, because I think he's one of the most interesting and multi-layered characters in the whole DC universe.
See, he agrees with me, Phil.
I don't disagree with that. You do that to me every time.
You get all the coolness of Superman, but you get a little more complexity too.
There's a lot, yeah. And then he's also probably the single most powerful superhero in the DC universe too. What can't this guy do? What can't he? he's as powerful as Superman. He's a shapeshifter. He's a telepath. I wouldn't want to mess with that guy.
You do that to me every time, sir. You're like, I wrote this. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. Because man, look at this. Look at
there's
this.
a lot of stuff. It's okay.
Look at the I know. I look at the bibliography every time. I'm like scrolling. Oh yeah, he wrote this. Scrolling.
And he's still doing it.
I know. And we got questions later for you for that classic Justice League run you did, in the late 80s, early 90s. But it's like, I think a lot of people forget, like, you did the last couple months of the first series.
I did the last issues of Justice League Detroit.
Yeah. Yes.
It's a funny thing because I worked on that, then I worked on JLI, and I felt like in all that time I never wrote the Justice League because they were so different from the Justice League I grew up. It wasn't until I did Justice League Unlimited that I was like, oh, it's the Justice League, But no, Justice League Detroit came about just because Jerry Conway had left the book, and Andy Helfer, who was editing it, I guess they knew at that point that there was going to be an end point because of the Legends miniseries, and they were going to reboot something down the line. I certainly didn't know that I was going to have anything to do with it. And he said, will you finish off Jerry's story, then write me a 4-part story and kill this character and this character?
Oh.
No! You're the hitman! No!
Yeah, it was. You got to get the money wherever you can get it. If you need that money, if you got to kill Vibe, you kill Vibe.
See? Okay, so you want to go on public record. It was not your idea to kill Vibe. You were just under orders.
I was just, oh God, that's a terrible thing. I don't want to.
I know, yeah.
Invoke the Nazis.
Yeah, no.
No, yeah, but I think there was a specific, order to knock off some characters along the way. I'm pretty sure they told me which characters to knock off. It's been a long time because I wasn't, honestly going in, I wasn't really familiar with that team. I hadn't been following it closely. So, I think we killed Vibe and Steel. Maybe somebody, I don't know if we killed somebody.
I think it was just Vibe and Steel, yeah.
Yeah. And then as far as I knew, that was it. I was like, okay, I finished that. And then time went by, and then Andy came back to me about JLI. And next thing I knew, I was up to my neck in Justice League for 5 years. And it still wasn't the real Justice League,
Was the humor something that you kind of brought yourself, or was that something that the editorial was kind of wanting you to lean into?
Oh, no. As you can see by the reaction after we left, the editorial was never happy with the humor. They couldn't do anything about it for a long time because the book was such a big hit, I think. But they certainly, for a period after we left, did everything they could to undo anything vaguely humorous about that run. No, the humor just evolved. We didn't go, I've said this many times, but we didn't go into this going, we're going to do a lighthearted superhero book. It wasn't the plan. We were going to do the Justice League. It was going to be this new batch of characters. Keith, by his nature, is always going to lean into a little bit of humor. I picked up on that on the dialogue, and magnified that. Then he magnified what I magnified. Like by about 6 issues in, we kind of went, "Oh, that's what this is," When we, it's really it's a character, but and even there, the humor wasn't meant to be like, oh, it's just going to be a joke a minute. The humor illuminated the characters. The humor told us who Blue Beetle was, who Booster Gold was, how they interacted with John, and all these things. Occasionally we went over the top and did something really silly, but mostly the humor was character based. Which I always say we were doing Seinfeld before there was Seinfeld. You could read 22 pages of people just talking to each other, and yet if you look at an episode of Seinfeld, if you look at an issue of Justice League, there's a lot of plot going on there. Just because people aren't hitting each other doesn't mean there's not a plot. I think a lot of people, when they read comics, confuse hitting with plot, and that's not what it is.
And they fight for 15 pages.
That's right. Exactly.
Well, did you and Keith? You guys had Kevin McGuire.
Yeah.
Kevin McGuire is awesome. So
but see, here's the thing: nobody knew that then. You know what I mean? It was all a happy accident. Andy didn't know that putting me and Keith together was going to work. It could have been a disaster, but it just worked. I always say you can't create that kind of creative chemistry, just like you can't create chemistry between two people out in the real world. It either happens or it doesn't. And, Kevin was brand new to the business pretty much. And Andy, brilliant person that he was, somehow thought, let me put these three weird people together, and something magical happened, which it took us about 10 years to figure out that, that was really good what we did. Because when we were doing the book, we were just doing the book, and then the book became a hit. So we did the spin-off into Justice League Europe, and we had Justice League Quarterly, which was like 4 80-page stories a year. And then I was doing spin-offs with Martian Manhunter and and Dr. Fate and Mr. Miracle. I mean, it was like, so it became like this Justice League industry for me for 5 years.
And again, I mean, I don't know if the humor would have been there all the way, because it's like you were the first Justice League book after Crisis. So did I read somewhere where they're like, yeah, they did the Superman reboot, so you couldn't have Superman, you couldn't have Wonder Woman.
Yeah, they told us what characters.
It feels a little easier that way because you don't have to worry about what they're doing in those books.
Exactly.
Well, it's true. It was it sounds, at the time it might have sounded terrible. You can't have this character, you can't have that character. Here's like Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, who honestly, great character, but at the time I'd never heard of him. This whole run of basically B and C string characters aside from Batman. And even Martian Manhunter was considered not an A-list character at the time. He was around forever, but he was never considered an A-list character. But that gives you the freedom to do whatever you want with him. The same thing when I was doing Defenders at Marvel, I always gravitated to the B and C and D-list characters because that gave me the freedom to turn them into whatever I wanted to turn them into. And that was if we had Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, that whole thing, we couldn't have done the things that we did. We would have had other editors all over us all the time.
Yeah, I've heard multiple creators say, it's much easier when you don't have someone who has a monthly book, or in the case of like Superman and Batman, like multiple.
We always joke about that electric Superman coming in at the end.
Poor Grant.
They had to do it.
Grant Morrison. I mean, he had all the big seven, but then you have to worry about Superman and his 4 books, Batman and his 4 books, Wonder Woman and her book. Yeah. So it's like
that freed us.
Yeah, creative freedom. Yeah. But yeah, no, that
is my Justice League as far as I'm concerned, because that's right around the time when I started reading those books. So, I mean, yeah, sure, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman are cool, but a little oversaturated. So I appreciated the change of pace.
I just, to this day, I don't think of it as the Justice League. I think of it as our Justice League. Do you know what I mean? It's over in its own...
A league of their own, if you will.
Yeah, no, it's true, though. Yeah, they as far as we're concerned, they exist in their own little universe, really, that's separate from the rest of DC. It's its own thing.
I mean, it speaks to people. People love it because, I said, oh, hey, you're coming on the Tuck Justice League, and people emailed us questions. Guess which era they emailed us questions for? Yep, that JLI,
Sure. And then, we got to revisit that when Keith and I were doing Justice League 3000. And eventually, as that book went on, Blue Beetle showed up, and Booster Gold showed up, and Fire showed up, and Ice showed up. So it became a little mini JLI reunion in that book.
So did Bruce Timm give you any money? Because basically you were doing Justice League Unlimited before Justice League Unlimited was a thing.
Justice League Unlimited, though, was a very different thing. Justice League Unlimited was, I think it was a brilliant show. I mean, I don't see a lot of similarity between the two, other than, having a lot
extended
of
characters.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's one of the. You can take all the comics, movies, whatever you want. Justice League Unlimited is one of the best versions. Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, both those cartoon shows, which were basically the same show. Brilliant interpretation of the Justice League, and there may be others as good, but I can't think of anything that's better.
Well, there might be some similarities in a few episodes, because you wrote a few episodes of Justice League Unlimited.
There were a few where we used the JLI. Yeah. But that was, they had already established their world.
Yeah.
Well, besides Kevin Maguire, you also worked with a very young Adam Hughes.
Yeah, Adam Hughes. Adam Hughes is kind of like Kevin. He came along. I'd never heard of him. He was just brilliant right out of the box. I'm sorry we couldn't have held on to him longer. And we had, Ty Templeton and Mike McCone did a lot of fill-ins for us. Just a lot of really terrific. I'm sure I'm forgetting people. A lot of really terrific artists on that book over the course of those 5 years. People think Kevin did the whole thing, but Kevin was only around for about a year and a half. Then he'd pop back occasionally, or he'd do covers, or he'd do like a one-off story somewhere. He set the tone, though. What Kevin did in that year and a half really set the tone, because I don't think anyone had ever quite done what Kevin did before. That level of acting on the page, that level of acting and reacting through the characters. I don't know if there's another artist who had ever done it quite that well and in that way.
And that moment people still talk about when Batman punches out Guy Gardner.
Yeah. I give Keith most of the credit for that. I just had to throw in a couple of balloons there, but that I do.
If anyone has here, I'm pulling up some of the questions, because like I said, all the questions we got sent were for Justice League International. So while we're here,
but what the working relationship between you and Keith? I assume you kind of. You co-plotted and then you would do script, or how did that work?
No, we, in the original run back in the 80s, I always say we worked in glorious isolation. It's not like we were on the phone a lot. We weren't, we'd be up at DC every couple of weeks because, Friday afternoon paychecks would come down back in the days before direct deposit, and we'd all converge in Andy's office. Andy would take us out to lunch and we'd chat and whatever. But mostly it was a machine at that point. Keith did his plots. Keith used to draw out his plots like little mini comics. FedEx man would show up at my house with the plot. I'd look it over and I'd just start to dialogue and just write. Sometimes, as I always say, sometimes I shoot very closely to what Keith had. Sometimes I just went off on my own because, through dialogue, you can change a lot of things in a story and add all kinds of levels of character and interaction to a story that isn't there in the plot. And Keith, unlike many people, did not object. He loved it. He loved the fact that I would take the thing and then start spinning the plates off in a different direction. And he would see what I did. He'd build on that. And, in my years of working with Keith, even when we were kind of co-plotting and talking plots over, by the time he sat down to do the plot, he'd do whatever the hell he wanted, change it all 100 ways anyway. And that's always been the fun of what we've done together is we just keep surprising each other. And that kept it fresh. That really kept it fresh. But I'm saying someone else plotting that book, if I did some of the things that I did, would have had me thrown off the book. But Keith loved it. Keith did not have, there was no artistic ego involved. We just, it was, again, this chemistry happened on the paper. We didn't have that chemistry necessarily as people in the beginning because we didn't really know each other well. And then over the years, once we got back together for formerly known as the Justice League later on, we started to talk more regularly. We got to know each other better. And, I still talk to Keith. Every couple of weeks I want to give him a phone call, check in, see what's going on. But back then, no, it was just like, you write the plot, I'll write the script. And sometimes I literally wouldn't know what the story was until the plot showed up. And sometimes I have to call Andy up. So, Andy, what's happening here? Could you explain this part of the story to me? Because I don't understand from the plot over it.
But yeah, Sean Wood sent us that questions because you were talking about like the humor and like DC, what it wasn't like their idea. But was there did you get like any active resistance from DC editorial about the jovial approach or?
Well, here, what I think and what I've come to understand over the years is that there was more resistance than we understood. But Andy Helfer, being the great guy and great editor that he was, he kind of jumped in front of us and took all the bullets. He dealt with the other editors and the people that said, "What are you doing to my character in that book?" and all that stuff. I think a lot of editors were probably terrified that we were going to make fun of their characters. When if you read those stories, we're not making fun of anybody. Mm-hmm. We're having fun with them, and that's a very different thing than making fun of something. But Andy took care of that. Andy dealt with all the other editors, and Denny O'Neil, to his eternal credit, said, "Here, have Batman. Go ahead, have fun."
Do you think there's any way they would do anything like that today?
I don't know. Isn't Tom King doing some book with all our old JLI characters?
Yeah, but it's not as humorous though. I'm like, do you think they would do like the full humor level like you guys did now? Would they do any book like that now?
Yeah, I don't see why not, because I think people are open to being more experimental now and trying anything. But again, we did not go in. No one presented this as we're going to do the lighthearted sitcom version of the Justice League. That just sort of happened and evolved. And I always say the characters led us to it. It was always like, well, did you guys plan on making Beetle and Booster the Abbott and Costello of the team or whatever? No. They were in a couple of scenes together, and I got them talking to each other, and, Keith set up the scenes, and there was something going on there. So we kept doing it more, and then eventually we realized these guys are not just, great characters individually, they're great characters together. And not only that, they're kind of the hub of the wheel for the whole team.
So in the beginning, were you just like, oh, well, thank goodness they gave me Batman? And then after a while, were you just like, I don't really need Batman. I got these guys.
Honestly, I was not making the decisions about what character was in, what character was out. Like I said, here's the plot, write a script. Was the way.
So they gave you, the full roster. Like you didn't have any say. They were just like...
even in the beginning, I don't think Keith and Andy had anything to do with it either. The powers that be said, here are the characters. If you look in the first issue, those are the characters they gave us. And in fact, I think if you look at the end of Legends, it's a slightly different group than the group that showed up in Justice League in our first issue. But so I knew nothing about it, and I only later found out that Keith had no power over that either. He didn't know either. They just here's the characters, go ahead, and we just did the best we could with it.
Yeah, because that was some of our other questions. So it's like, so you were told to include Dr. Fate and Dr. Light?
Right.
Okay.
Right. As far as I know, those are the marching orders.
Was this a new way of working for you at this point?
Yeah.
I mean, had you traditionally done full script on everything?
Yeah, anything before that, I basically, it's just me writing. Or maybe occasionally I would be co-plotting with an artist that I was working with, but mostly, I don't think I ever worked with someone else plotting and me scripting. And again, this was different because, Keith wasn't plotting in a traditional way. He was drawing these in mini comics. And I had the freedom, because I've been in other situations where I've dialogued someone else's plot, and they were not as happy with what I did, or as permissive as Keith was, I would say that, Keith's instinct is always to run for the edge of the cliff and jump off. So in our collaboration, I always felt like, I would run after him and grab his legs and stop him from jumping off the cliff. But in the meantime, by stopping him, he dragged me a mile farther than I would ever gone on my own, So we really balanced each other very nicely there.
Nice.
So do you enjoy, you're probably going to say it both, but it's your time writing the comic, or is the animation better or do you like it better? Or
it's no better. It's just different.
Different.
It's just different. Like I said, the fun of Justice League on the TV show, the animated show, was that I got to write those classic characters, and 100 million other characters. So I talk about the fact that writing team books and team stories is very difficult. The first one I did for them was for the Man Who Has Everything, the Alan Moore story. That was really just, 3 characters, just Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, and a villain. And then the next one they gave me was called The Return, which had just about every hero that had ever been in the Justice League. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this, But, it's no matter how long you're working, there's always something that's going to come along that's going to help you stretch and grow as a writer. And working for that show, even though I'd written Justice League, the comic, for so long, and I'd written other, Defenders and other team things, really helped me get the dynamics of a team story straight in my head in a way I never had before. And I had to do it because, here's the gig. This is the story we want this week. Now go write it. Here's 1,000 characters. Make it work, But it was really fun. I loved writing for that show. I think I did 7 episodes.
You've done Justice League Unlimited. Have you done other animation as well?
Oh, I've done tons of animation. Oh my God, yeah, I've written for Justice League, for Batman Brave and the Bold, Ben 10, Thundercats. I'm forgetting some other shows. I've written, I think, 5 animated movies for Warner Brothers. Yeah,
awesome.
That's what I've done. Yes, I've been doing animation's been a big part of my career for over 20 years now.
Literally, scroll. His
There's a lot.
You're going to be scrolling. Yeah.
I know I'm forgetting some of the shows that I've written for. So I've done a lot of stuff. Legion of Superheroes.
How did Ben 10 come about? That seems like
Dwayne McDuffie called me up one day and said, "You want to do an episode of Ben?"
Nice.
I'd worked with Dwayne on Justice League Unlimited, so yeah, that's really as simple as that. It's like anything else. Once you start doing, I got not dragged into. I stumbled into animation backwards. I'd done a little tiny bit of animation before, but it was never my goal. I never had on my list of things I want to do right for animation. And my friend Stan Berkowitz, I had worked with him on the live-action Superboy show, which some people remember and some people don't even know it ever existed. It was on in the late 80s, early 90s. And Stan was the producer of that show.
Is it the one where he's in college? That one?
I think the first couple of seasons he was in college. I worked on the last season where they completely revamped the show, so it was much more of a traditional Superman kind of story, but they called him Superboy,
Yes, okay, I'm familiar.
Yeah. And anyway, so I'd written a bunch of episodes of that show. I'd worked with Stan, and then when that show was over, I'd been approached by Marty Pasco, another comic book guy. He was story editing the 90s Spider-Man TV show. And I said, you should meet my friend Stan Berkowitz. He's a great writer, and so I plugged Stan into Marty, and Stan ended up on staff on the Spider-Man show, and then went on to this Emmy Award-winning career in animation. And so now some years go by, and he's working on Justice League Unlimited, and Stan was like, do you want to write an episode? I was like, I'll always say yes, because first of all, you're a freelancer. You have to say yes, because you have to pay the bills. And 2, it was a challenge. It was something new. It was something different. And the first thing they gave me was for The Man Who Has Everything, which happily I had never read and did not know that it was like, the monolith from 2001 that people bowed before, and that this was this incredible classic thing. And then they sent me, I read it. Oh, that's a good story. And we worked on it. We adapted it. And I'll never forget this because I turned in my first draft. Now, normally when you write for television, and I'd written for live action television before that, you're doing at least 3-4 drafts, at least, So I turn in the first draft, and I don't hear anything. And I'm thinking, well, I screwed this up. They're never going to invite me back again. And finally, I couldn't bear it. I called up Stan. I said, what happened? Was it really terrible? He said, no, it was perfect. You don't need to rewrite this. We're going to use it the way it is. So then I very naively thought, well, I guess the next one I do for them will be the same thing. When the next one was the one with 1,000 characters, The Return. And there were notes. Believe me, there were notes. And there were 3 or 4 drafts before that one was done. That's only happened to me a few times where you do a draft or two. I was working on the Constantine animated movie. It was called Constantine City of Demons. And I think we were on the second draft. And like I said, usually there's a third draft, there's a polish, and I turned in the second draft, and I get on the phone with all these people from the CW and the animation people. I had like 10 people on the phone that are everyone usually giving you notes at the same time. And they went, no notes. What? But that's such a rare thing. It's really a rare thing. You have to be prepared to write and rewrite in television. It's just the way it goes.
From a creative standpoint, is there someone, a character you've enjoyed more in animation than, say, maybe in comics writing?
Well, that's interesting. Let me think about that. I'd say Constantine, except that I was writing the Justice League Dark comic, and that's when I kind of clicked with that character. I can't think of any off the top of my head. Probably when we're done with this, later today I'll go, oh yeah, nothing off the top of my head. Well, no, that's not necessarily true. I know. So a lot of times what happens is you'll be presented with a character. Like I wrote a Deathstroke animated movie called Deathstroke Knights and Dragons. Deathstroke was not on my radar. I was aware of the character. He's a super assassin. Super assassins aren't necessarily my cup of tea. But your job as a writer is to find the thing in that character that you can hook into and relate to. So I did my research and I read about a bunch of stories and read all the Wikipedia entries and the whole thing, and I found things in there. And by the time I was done working on that animated movie, I really liked that character, so that's the way those things tend to work. Even in comics, it's like, the gig comes along and it's some character that you're not in love with, and you have to take a step back and think, is there a way in for me? What can I find in this character that I can hook into psychologically and emotionally and care about? And sometimes as a writer, as opposed to a reader, I will love certain characters more as a writer than I ever did as a reader. Even Spider-Man, I was always a Spider-Man fan, always. But writing Peter Parker and reading about Peter Parker were two different things. And I fell in love with that character in a whole new way, writing Spider-Man. It's a very different thing. And you get to know, and sometimes characters that you may have enjoyed reading about, you're not clicking with them writing about them, It's an interesting thing. It's a whole other head, because you really have to not just live with, but ultimately become these characters when you write them. I always say, like, some of these characters I know better than I know my best friends, because I'm in their heads. I know every little stray thought, every fear, every neuroses. I know it all. Certainly when it comes to, characters like Peter Parker and Ben Reilly, I know those guys so well.
Oh, yeah, not to go too far off the path, but yes, that current Ben Reilly book, yes.
We're waiting.
Good job. Excellent,
you.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a blast. Picking up a character, especially when you haven't read them in so long.
Yeah.
When you have a really dear friend and you haven't seen him in 5 years, and then you bump into this person, it's like no time has passed, and you just start talking. And that's what it is with these characters, too. That's what it was with Ben on this series. It was just like, Ben, you're back. Oh, it's so good to see you. Let's go,
Yes, but Will down there is just picking your brain because he writes his own comics. So I think he's looking for
pick
tips.
Pick away. But I have to ask, wait a minute, about the dog picture behind you.
Okay.
My eye keeps being drawn to that.
That's actually we have a basset hound. That's Otis. So they can take a picture and put them in a painting. So that my son's got that for my wife. So that's called the ambassador version of the painting. So
that's great. That's really great.
That's Otis the hound dog.
He keeps staring at me, so I'm like.
It diverts nicely away from me, so it's perfect background.
Smart.
Everyone asks about that every time someone new is like, "What's that painting?"
Our very spoiled hound dog.
Oh, hey, Will, did you read any of that Spectre? I know you wanted to ask him some Spectre questions.
Oh yeah. So I was catching up.
Because of course
it's been
he
a long
loves Hal
time
Jordan.
since I'd read your Spectre series. Yes, I'm very much a Green Lantern fan, and Hal Jordan in particular. I was catching up, so it had been literally decades since I had read those series. So I got through about the first year of it. And I mean, Ryan Sook was another early artists, starting out.
I had two great artists on that series. I had Ryan Sook and Norm Brayfolder were the two main artists. We had some wonderful fill-in artists too, but the two of them did the bulk of it. And I was very, very lucky to have both of them on that book. That book was a real challenge too, because I grew up loving the Justice League. I loved the Hal Jordan Green Lantern as a kid. To this day, I think that the whole Green Lantern metaphor, will plus imagination equals manifestation. That's a philosophy for living. It's not just a superhero, And so they said, do you want to write the Spectre? And now it's Hal Jordan. And it's sort of like going in, and I remember, especially when that book was coming out, I'll get to that in a minute. Let me go chronologically. There were a lot of people that loved Hal Jordan and wanted Hal Jordan to be Green Lantern again. There were people that loved the traditional Spectre and wanted him to go back and turn into a giant cheese grater and, kill people. Yeah. And so here I was with this thing that was neither of those things. And a lot of people at the time did not care for it. And I loved working on that book. I poured heart and soul into that book. And I was given a lot of freedom to tell exactly the kind of stories that I wanted to tell. And it was a story of redemption. Mm-hmm. When I said going in, I can't write stories about the Spectre being the hand of vengeance. This has to be Hal Jordan's journey to redemption. And that's really what the book was about. And in a way, it picked up a lot of the themes that I'd been dealing with some years before when I was writing Dr. Fate at DC. So it's sort of in my brain an unofficial sequel, at least thematically, because it dealt with a lot of the same stuff, the bigger, more cosmic / spiritual questions, Mm-hmm. And so it was amazing that it actually lasted as long as it did, because, first we did a 4-issue thing in Legends of the DC Universe that Michael Zulli drew. Mm-hmm. Then I did an issue of Justice League where we brought him into the Justice League. And then we did I think it was almost 3 years of that book. So considering how short-lived so many books are, it was a pretty good run, and I would love to see them collect that.
Now, this was, let's say, I think from 2001 to maybe 2003 or 2004.
Something like that, yeah.
Did the impending reboot, the Jeff Johns reboot, is that what ended the Spectre series? Or
no, I think it was just sales. I think. It's so funny because at one point I approached them and I said, "Look, I have a great idea," because I knew that. The people really wanted, and I really wanted to see Hal Jordan be Green Lantern again. I said, let's finish Hal's arc and redeem him, and let him go back and be Green Lantern again. And then what we can do, we can take this whole Spectre thing and create two characters, a spirit of vengeance and a spirit of redemption. Because Hal had kind of evolved into the spirit of redemption. So you'd have gotten 3 characters for the price of 1. I thought it was a great idea, and then they said, nah. But that's not to knock the people that made that decision. That's just life when you're a freelancer. Sometimes they say yes and sometimes they say no. But I think that would have been a great idea. And then years later, when I was doing Justice League Dark, which was maybe about 8 or 10 years ago, I finally created a character who was the spirit of redemption. So I finally got that character out there.
I mean, your career, so it's
so storied.
I know, and because it's like, hey, you don't get to do it today. Maybe 5 years down the road, you're going to get to do.
But that's the lesson you have to learn when you're a freelancer. I mean, with a lot of my own original stuff, my CreatorOwned stuff, there were stories that it took 10 years, 20 years. Literally, there was one that took 25 years before I could sell the idea that I'd been nursing and reworking. You have to be patient. I always say stories have lives of their own and they have their own timing. And sometimes it's amazing. It's like you pitch it and they go, yeah, and off you go. And sometimes people just don't get it. And one day, one person gets it. And finally, you get that yes. And then the weird thing is when if you've waited 10 or 20 years to tell a story that you've lived with all that time, then you sit down to write it. And I've had it happen a couple of times where I go, how the hell do I write this thing? I've had this idea forever, but how do I actually execute it? Mm-hmm. I did a thing for IDW called The Life and Times of Savior 28, which I think is one of the best things I've ever done. And it's the basic idea started way back when I was writing Captain America in the early 80s. And I had a storyline that they pulled the plug on. See, it happens all the time. But I saved the idea and I kept developing it and pitching it and developing it and pitching it, and nobody got it. And then it was 2009, and I was, I left Captain America in 1983. So it's 2009, and I pitched it to Chris Reilly, who was at IDW at the time. And the day that I pitched it, they approved it. Nice. It only took, whatever it was, 20, 25 years, but I got an instant approval that day. So you just never know. And then it ended up being
that's
just
also the industry itself, like kind of growing and taking chances and wanting to be more experimental and stuff too.
I guess, but the 80s were pretty chancy and experimental. They really were. I mean, I did a lot of very experimental stuff in the 80s. So it's just the timing, I think. It just wasn't, for whatever reason, it wasn't the right time. And I'm glad I ultimately did it with my own character and not with Captain America.
Yeah, because eventually they would probably turn that around because you wanted to replace Captain America. Yeah, they wouldn't let that be a long lasting. Yeah.
Well, everything, they change everything, then they change it back, which I understand why they do, because these are multi-billion-dollar properties now.
Yeah, which is crazy to think about, right?
It's crazy to think about it. I mean, when I started in comics, relatives would say, "Well, you don't really want to do this, though. You're just waiting until something better comes along."
Well, you also did a standalone graphic novel with how Green Lantern Will World. Is that what it was?
Oh yeah, with Seth Fisher.
Yeah, that was really kind of experimental visually and just kind of...
Seth Fisher was, I don't know if you know the story with Seth, but he died very young. When he was still in his 20s. So he was just brilliant. He's the kind of guy, you'd give him the script and, you'd describe what's on the page and he would add 1,000 cool things on top of that. I mean, it's sort of like, if you've seen the book, his mind was kind of like what that book looked like, just things exploding out of his head, just so creative and so brilliant. And I keep thinking, if he was still around today, what kind of work would he be doing? And that was a really fun book because it was totally experimental and completely off the wall. If you don't know, if the premise is that I decided that when Green Lanterns are being trained, one of the part of their training is they have to go into the power bed, into a world of pure imagination, and you lose your identity when you go in. And you have to learn how to, use your imagination and your will, and everything that he's in, this world that he's in, he doesn't realize at first is all created from his own unconscious. Mm-hmm. So it's Hal's journey first to remember who he is, and then figure out a way to get control of this world and get out of it. And just it's worth it for the art alone. It's just such a beautiful, beautiful book.
An amazing story too. I mean, it was at that time, when I think it was pre-Spectre and post, Final Night.
I don't know where it fell in that timeline. It might have been, I don't know.
It was nice for me to have a classic Hal Jordan, so I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and it's a nice standalone story. You don't need to know anything else really. But I think if when you jump into the story, it doesn't get explained until later. So you're in this really weird world, and Hal Jordan's like riding an alien horse, like he's a cowboy. He has no idea who he is, and you have to go on the journey and to get it all figured out.
Well, are there? I mean, I know you've had as Lilith said, a storied career with Marvel and DC. Are there characters that you haven't had a chance to really, delve into that you really want to, or even your own creations at this point? CreatorOwned stuff.
I have in the coming year. I've got 5 different CreatorOwned things that will be coming.
Nice.
So and some of them are newer ideas, and some of them, just like I've said, are ideas that have been, I've been walking around with for 10 or 15 years, and I'm finally getting a chance to tell them, So I've got a lot of that coming out this year. And in terms of characters that I haven't had a chance to write, at DC, because I've done the comics and the animation, I've written almost everybody in some way, shape, or form. I'm sure there's something. I always thought that Keith and I would have fun if we were doing like the Challenges of the Unknown and could reboot that.
Yeah,
that might be fun. Which leads into, at Marvel, I always thought that me and Keith and Kevin doing Fantastic Four would be great. Because I never had it. I've written individual members of the Fantastic Four in stories, but I've never written the Fantastic Four. And that's one of my favorite all-time books. You can't beat Stan and Jack at their peak, So, I'm sure there are some other characters. And just in general, like at DC, even though I wrote Justice League Dark, and I've written, the Constantine movie and the Justice League Dark movie and all that stuff, I love the DC supernatural characters. They have just a phenomenal, deep bench, as they say, of supernatural characters. And I would always welcome a chance to revisit those characters again.
Awesome.
I was looking. I think the only question you haven't answered that people send us is, Justin wanted to know from your Justice League run, what was the inspiration behind the character of the Gray Man?
I don't know.
It was so long ago, Justin.
Ask Keith, right?
Ask Keith, and he'll probably, what he'll say? I don't know.
That seems like the big thing when we talk to creators. Like Mark Waid told us, he's like, I remember everyone else's stuff way more than I remember my own stuff.
And, with me, it's like, oh, here's a character in the plot. His name is the Gray Man. Okay, I got to figure out, what's his voice. And what, the premise is all there in Keith's plot. And then I add my half to the thing, So it's a funny thing.
So a lot of it's just the team effort. He would send you, a character. He'd be like, okay, I got to come up with a backstory for this guy.
It's sort of like, I've used this metaphor before in many different ways, but it's sort of like, Keith builds a house, right? Mm-hmm. But it's like, it's the wood frame. It's the architecture of this house is amazing. You've never seen a house like this, But it needs to be painted. It needs, all the roof put on. It needs a lawn planted. You got to put in the brick front walk. I have to go inside and paint the walls and hang the pictures and pick out the furniture. You know what I mean? So without Keith, there's no house. But without me, you don't have that other stuff that's in the house and around the house, But, Keith, I always give Keith more of the credit because he went to an empty lot and built a house. And then several different people could have come and done different things with that house. And that's the other thing that people don't understand, I think, that if you had three different guys dialoguing those plots, you would have had a very different Justice League.
Oh, yeah.
It was the chemistry between the two of us that made that. That's why people, I think, don't get it when they talk about Lee and Kirby also, Mm-hmm. At a certain point, yes, Kirby was creating those plots on his own and handing them over to Stan. But if you know comics and you can read those stories and you see how much Stan did with those stories, not to take anything away from Jack Kirby, who's a genius and who I revere more than anybody in the history of comics. But, what Stan did with those plots, through the dialogue. And as I know, you can write a whole different story on top of that plot, which used to piss Jack off. Like Keith, who was like, yeah, do whatever you want. Jack thought he was writing those stories. So then Stan would completely change things and he would flip out, at least based on everything I've heard. But there's so much that can be done through the dialogue, But like I said, still, there's an empty lot until Keith builds that plot. And the same thing with Stan and Jack. They're standing in an empty lot until Jack builds a house for Stan, to paint and plant the lawn and do all those things with. And I think I've now beaten this metaphor into the ground.
You said Keith would actually do like a mini comic. Rough layouts. Would Kevin or the artist, would they follow those layouts?
Yeah. I think as Kevin went along, he got a little braver and a little bit more mature in his work, so he would play with things a bit more. And by the time he got to, I can't, years later when we're doing, I Can't Believe It's Not Justice League. Is that what it was called? Yeah. He would diverge from the layouts more. But for most artists, I found when we were working on that book, the more they diverged from what Keith did, the worse it was. Because Keith is just a rock solid storyteller. You can look at his basic layouts, and he's like Kirby. It's like the storytelling is crystal clear, everything you need to know. And it got to the point where we'd worked together for so many years that I can take a quick look at a Keith page and just off I go. It's like I just completely intuitively understand everything he means in these little sketches.
Well, that's the core of comics right there, is that panel to panel storytelling, the layout.
Yep.
I mean,
yep.
You're prettying it up and making it, comics with, artists that can, draw amazing things, but that's comics right there. That panel to panel storytelling.
Yeah. And that's why I guess back in the old days at Marvel, a new artist would come along and Stan would call up Jack and say, I want you to break this story down for them. Which also, I think a lot meant, I want you to write this story. And from what I understand, they were very, very simple, basic layouts, but they were still, the Kirby storytelling was all there. And then they'd do that for a few issues and they'd understand and on they'd go and take off on their own.
Can you imagine, hey, kid, go learn from Jack Kirby.
Yeah, I know. A friend of mine was just the other day was showing me, we were having a Zoom chat, and he had a page, an old Shield page from the 60s. And it was another artist, I think, I forget it was Howard Purcell, I forget who the artist was. But Kirby had done the layouts, and all of Kirby's notes are in the margins about what's going on in the story. And it was like, what a cool thing. It's like an ancient artifact that we need to study,
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Phil.
No, go ahead.
Have you had a chance to do your dream team lineup of Justice League? And if not, who would be that dream team lineup?
Yeah, I think I have, because, at some point in Justice League Unlimited, for sure, they were all there, because to me, from being that kid growing up back then, it was Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, and Green Lantern. Mm-hmm. And I got to write all those guys, It was John Stewart, not Hal Jordan in the cartoon, but that's great because John Stewart's a fantastic character. And I think to a whole generation of kids growing up with that show, that's Green Lantern.
Absolutely.
John Stewart is Green Lantern. He's a great, great character. But that's the great thing about the Green Lantern Corps, too, because it's a core.
Yeah.
So you can have that's the one place where replicating powers is okay. There's everyone in the 90s especially, there was this fad of sort of like replicating characters' powers and giving them to somebody else, and it just felt like. But in the Green Lantern Corps, it makes sense. We're like we're an army of Green Lanterns, so of course we all have a ring and we all have the same powers. But then who are these people? And that's what makes the difference.
What do you do with it?
Yes,
Sinestro.
Right. That's the difference, right, between John Stewart and Hal Jordan and Kyle Rayner and Sinestro. Exactly.
All right, so those are your favorite heroes. Who were like some of your favorite villains to write?
In Justice League?
Yes. Yeah.
Let me think. If you
or who would you want to write? Yeah.
Well, in our run, I have to say, if you ask me and Keith, like, what's one of your all-time favorite stories? We go to Justice League Antarctica. I don't know if you remember that story where we took Nort and the guys from the Injustice League, and to get rid of them, they sent them to Antarctica and said, "You're now Justice League in Antarctica." And they fought Killer Penguins. So I think the Killer Penguins are probably my favorite villain. Then people also always talk about the Despero story that we did, where he was running around killing everybody, and it was really dark and dramatic. And yet I always say that in the back of my mind, part of me always thought that story was like a satire. And I was kind of satirizing my own stuff. It was sort of like, if you look at Despero's captions, it's very similar to like Craven's captions and Craven's Last Time. I am Despero, I am death, I am fire, all that kind of stuff. So part of me was just kind of goofing on the kind of stories that we were all doing back then, But that's a story that people seem to love. I think the villains in Justice League in that run anyway, because they were just as ridiculous as our heroes and just as sympathetic and likable in their way. So I really, really like them. And in terms of serious Justice League villains, that's a good question. And I'm drawing a blank. And I'm sure again, once we're done, I'll go, oh yeah.
I feel like modern Justice League is too reliant on Darkseid. Like, goodness. Every other story, it's like, can we just defeat him? Can we just let him be?
Yeah, Darkseid is one of those characters, sort of like Dr. Doom. Like, when I was a kid reading Marvel in the 60s, maybe Dr. Doom showed up once every year or year and a half or something, and it was a big deal because he was the one. If he showed up every month, it's not the same thing. And Darkseid is such a, again, the genius of Kirby. It's enough that he, co-created Dr. Doom. He also created Darkseid, the greatest villain in DC, And I think with those kind of villains, the less you use them, the more impact they have when they do show up. I'm not knocking anybody's work because I haven't read all these stories that you're talking about, but I just think personally, less is more with those kind of characters.
Well, I thought the New Gods book in and of itself is good, but like just as the villain all the time, it's like Joker when he shows up too much. I was like, exactly. I'd rather see the Riddler.
Yeah, right. How many times can the Joker show up?
Yeah.
And if he only shows up once a year, then it's an event.
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, is that more sales driven than anything? Because remember when Venom first showed up, he was like a once a year guy, and then in the 90s they're like, oh, he's very popular. Let's throw him into everything we can throw him into.
In the 90s, especially because everything was selling through the roof, and then if you knew that if you had Venom on the cover in a hologram, if you remember those days, you could sell 600,000 to 700,000 comic books. So yeah, and it's a business. And if people were not buying all those comics with Venom in it, they would not have been putting him in there. That's right. It's as simple. So it's not, we always go, oh, the companies are so. No, it's a two-way street. It's the companies and the people that are running out to buy 700,000 copies of Venom, or whatever it is. And I think in terms of the Joker, it's because we all love the Joker. So if you're the new guy in Batman, what do you want to do? You want to write your Joker story. Oh, yeah. I wrote my big Joker story. I did a story called Go Insane and Legends of the Dark Knight, which I consider one of the best things I've ever done. And I think we actually used Joker in our JLI too, in one of our annuals.
I know. Yeah, you guys show up.
Yeah. But I think those are the only Joker stories I've ever done. Just those two.
Well, you mentioned that you've got about 4 or 5 things coming out. Are those going to be through like IDW or?
I'll just say that some will be through a standard publishing thing, and some will be through crowdfunding things, and so a lot of different.
You should go on Will's show.
Yeah.
Oh yes, he has another show.
What's the show?
It's I do a show with Kevin Joseph. We're both writers, and we're both Kickstarter guys. We do our.
Oh, okay.
So what we do is every week we highlight creators that have Kickstarters running. So please.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It probably will be in September, October, right around there. So
awesome.
yeah, you guys have my email address.
Yeah,
So just, let's keep in touch about it.
Excellent.
That'd be great, because I'm going to have to hype the hell out of that when it comes.
Yeah,
I don't think you'll have to work quite as hard as some of us guys work. I mean, you are who you are. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, Will, get this unknown guy's name out into the public. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but it's still a new venue for me, So and I wanted to succeed.
Well, and
it's a great thing because it takes away. There's another wall between you and the audience. It's gone.
Yeah.
It's just you and the audience. There's no publisher in between. There's nothing. It's a great thing.
And the great thing about at least the Kickstarter community on indie comics on Kickstarter is that it's very, very supportive. I mean, we all support each other, so you'll be joining that community, which will be amazing and awesome.
Yeah, that's great. I'm looking forward to it. So I'm very excited about it, but I can't say anything about it.
Yes.
Lips are sealed, right?
Yeah.
So is that exciting, scary, or both, where you're just like, you know what, I don't have to answer to anyone. This is my thing. I can do what I want.
Oh, yeah, it's exciting. I mean, a lot of the creator-owned stuff that I've done over the years, the great thing about it is they leave you alone. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's your thing. And the editors, they're there to kind of support you through the process. But the final word, 99% of the time, is mine. So I'm the last one in line, and I'm the one going over the book, and I'm the one saying, let's change this or fix that. So there's most of the creator-owned stuff I've done, I've had all the creative freedom I could ever ask for. Occasionally, like when I work with my friend Karen Berger at Berger Books, Karen is Karen, the legendary editor. So Karen really likes to roll up her sleeves and get involved, even if it's a creator-owned thing. So we worked a lot. There was a lot more give and take with Karen on the Girl in the Bay when I did that for her. But in general, me and the artists were left alone to do what we want to do the way we want. And even if they're going to make a suggestion about this and that, the final word is ours. And they say, "What do you think if you do this?" And we go, "We're not doing that." And they go, "Sure, that's fine. It's your book," which is a great thing. It's a great thing.
All right, before I let you go, I know people will be screaming at me if I don't ask this. Okay, so whose idea in your Justice League one, or was it a collaborative, all of you? Where did Max Lord come from? Whose brain did birth Max Lord?
I think the Max Lord thing was in place before I even came on the book, so that probably was cooked up by Keith and Andy together. And then, once again, my job is, how do I take this guy from this plot and build him out into a character? And again, that's the thing. It goes back to what I said about Lee and Kirby. People say, well, Jack created the Silver Surfer because Stan didn't know he was going to be in the plot. But then what did Stan do with that? Just like if Stan says, hey, we're going to do this, and I came up with a character, and he throws out a name, and then Kirby goes and draws 20 pages, it doesn't matter that Stan came up with that idea. Kirby just developed that thing, and vice versa. Yeah. Stan puts the Silver Surfer in the book. Kirby puts the Silver Surfer in the book, and Stan develops that and turns it into something. And the same thing with me and Keith. So he may have said, oh, here's Maxwell Lord, so now what do I do with it? And those characters always became our characters by the time, and vice versa. If I had an idea, something goofy like General Glory, whatever it was, that became our character, not my character. It's our character. And it's really true with comics in general anyway. It's I may be sitting with a character in my head for 20 years, but until that artist brings that character to visual life, that character does not exist. And so I'm always happy, even if it's a character that I've developed on my own for years, to share their creator credit, because they're taking that thing and making it alive and interpreting it. And another artist interpreting the same idea would come up with something completely different. So, it's comics, you can't separate these things, the writer and the artist, or me and Keith, the two writers. You can't, or me and Keith and Kevin. It's three of us, We're all the creators of that stuff. And that's what's beautiful about comics. The other beautiful thing is, unlike TV, that's basically all it is. It's, it's a writer, an artist, and an editor for the most part. So it's even with these characters that we all know and love, where you think there's going to be tons of interference, and sometimes there is, but a lot of times there's incredible freedom to tell these stories the way we want to. Whereas in TV, you tend to be, like I said, sometimes I'm on the phone and there's like 10 people on the other end giving me notes. And you have to develop a skill. How do you take all those notes in, address the ones that really are meaningful, and still hold on to your story in the process? It's something you learn to develop over time. But comics, it's very pure. It's really very pure, the creative process.
Well, with the animated stuff, is it too? It's like you have to talk to animators and like, can we do this? Can we do this? I mean, with comics, is it just, oh, hey, can you draw? Can you draw this wild out there thing?
Yeah,
oh yeah. Let's
even
do it.
Even animation, they have budgets, and there's just so much they can do. Whereas in comics, 10,000 alien ships are coming, and they're fighting 10,000 heroes, and then they call up George Perez or whoever, and he draws 10,000 ships and 10,000 heroes and does it brilliantly, and I'm sure there's many an artist that want to strangle many a writer over the years. But that's the beauty of comics, not the strangling part. Whatever you imagine, you don't need a budget. All you need is an artist who's willing to draw it.
I know George Perez probably, there's probably the artists who are just like, man, he makes our jobs harder because he just makes it look so easy, than the rest of them are just.
It ain't easy. He's just brilliant. He's just a brilliant guy. And Kirby could do that too. And there were certain and other artists, their skill is just the way, I prefer really to focus in on smaller groups of characters. Their artists, their skill is like, Kevin, his skill is in the personal interactions between 2 or 3 people. I'm sure Kevin, knowing Kevin does not want to draw 10,000 superheroes fighting each other in space with 5,000 spaceships. That's not his thing. It's not what he does. Everybody has different strengths, and Perez can just, whatever it is, he can just do that, and it's amazing. Oh, Kevin is just as amazing because no one can do what Kevin can do.
And you've worked with such an amazing array of artists too. I mean, I think John Byrne.
I never worked with John. You picked someone I never worked with.
Oh, man. I went too far back on the Captain America.
Mike Zack,
yeah.
I worked with Mike on Captain America and Kratos last time, and some stuff after that as well. We did a Spider-Man miniseries called Redemption after that. Yeah, no. If I look at it, when you're doing it, it's like you're just doing it, and then you look back and you go, "Oh my God, look at who I've worked with! I've worked with Mike Zack, and I've worked with
Sal Buscema,
and Mike Plug, and then painters like John J. Muth and Kent Williams, and I've just mentioned 4 people out of dozens of amazing artists that I've worked with. Well, when I first started out at DC. I was learning my craft on the DC anthology books, or like little 6 or 8 page superhero stories that were done by Steve Ditko and Don Heck, these guys who I was, growing up reading their work, and Steve Ditko's drawing my story. Oh my God, it's like unbelievable. When I first went to Marvel, I was working, I did a couple of black and white Hulk stories that Gene Colan did. Gene Colan? Oh my God. I worked with John Buscema and Gil Kane on Conan. And I look back now, and I was just starting out then. I was like, if I could just go back in time and rewrite those stories, because I was doing the best that I could, but I was just learning my craft, and I know I could do so much better now. But I've also learned over the years that I have to respect who I was as a writer at any given point in my career, because what I've learned, and I've learned this through the fans, and I'm very, very grateful. I might be thinking, oh God, that story I wrote in 1982, that really was an awful piece of crap. And someone comes up to you,
loves it though.
Yeah, right, exactly. And someone comes up to you at a convention and says, "I love this story. It touched my heart. It changed my life. Whatever." And I went, "Oh, that's really interesting." So stop judging your stuff and just appreciate that it's out there and that people are still reading it and care about it. It's a great thing.
I think you just care too much because you're living with these stories every second of every day in your head. Some of us just come to it, be like, "Oh, hey, I love this story." Put it down.
Right, and we'll look at the story, and it's like sometimes what your brain is seeing is everything that's wrong with it, and you can't see what's right with it. And then you learn to be more forgiving. Because that's the writing process, though. It's like you're always, as I'm sure Will, you're peeling it apart. And, I was just finishing up a plot yesterday, and I thought it was done. And then I started to reread it. I went, oh, no, I got to fix it. Oh, no, that's not quite. Oh, let's get this in there. And that's the process. And then your brain is still doing that even when the thing is in print. And that's why I know when something is in print and I read it and I actually go, that's really good. It must be good, because I'm not peeling it apart like that.
Well, there is a story that you probably don't even remember that has stuck with me since I first read it 40 years ago, maybe. Marvel team up with Spider-Man and Daredevil. Centurion is the villain.
Oh, the Solar. I remember
Solar.
Yes. It's activating in the back of my brain here. Yeah.
With the great ending with the blood on his hands. I mean, that has stuck with me.
Oh, with the mob boss, right? Yep. Yeah. It's a funny thing because I worked on Marvel Team Up, and Team Up books are hard too. Because the challenge for me, I realized, and it took me like 6. If you read my first 6 months of stories, they're not that good. Although I'm sure there's someone out there who will tell me they love this one or that one. I thank you for that. But what I finally figured out was, all right, it's the same thing. All this continuity. It's just like you're using someone else's character. There's 2 other Spider-Man books. The character that's a guest star probably has a book or whatever. How do you make this meaningful? And I realized that it doesn't matter whether this affects continuity or if it's the story that will change Marvel Comics forever. What matters is that it's a story that has emotional and psychological depth to it, with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you make the reader care. It doesn't matter if you change the character forever or any of that stuff, which we see every month, and it doesn't change the character forever anyhow, you know? So I really just tried to make those stories have some psychological and emotional heft, you know, and I, you know, look for the moment each issue where you can really kind of plunge that dagger into somebody's heart and make them feel, you know?
Yeah.
Really, Will, you picked that story? This is the man who gave us Ternity Century. Come on.
Yeah.
Conan's not here. It's okay.
I know. Ternity Century was supposed to be silly. It was intentional.
I know. We love him.
Well, we did a whole month on it.
Yeah.
Oh, now I have to bring him back now.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it.
It's funny because I did a podcast with Ray, who does the Moon Knight.
Oh, yeah.
He was like, bring your top 10 comics, you know, for the Desert Island, you know, the ones that, you know, are, you know, you remember the most or that affect you the most. And that Marvel team up is on the list because I still to this day remember it. And I'm like,
oh, that's great. That's great.
Wow. You know, and it's up there with some really awesome stories too.
And it's Kerry Gamble who's drawn that book then.
I think that's right. Yeah.
And I think he drew that story. Yeah. We had some great Sal Buscema villains along the way too, but Kerry did most of them.
Oh yeah, there's a ton of your Spider-Man stuff that's stuck in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see like an omnibus, you know, starting with the Marvel team up stuff, you know, right through Craven's Last Hunt and all the sequels and the 2 runs on Spectacular Spider-Man and all that stuff, you know, it'd be great. All the miniseries, and that'd be a really nice thing.
Yeah, and then on your DC work, you know, hey, let's throw in some Spectre there and throw in.
Yeah, I would love to see Spectre collected. I'd love to see my Dr. Fate run collected. I'd love to see that Martian Manhunter series collected. That's never been collected. A lot of stuff out there that still hasn't been collected.
That would be that would be someone's full-time job, just reprinting the works of J.M. DeMatteis.
Well, I passed that job on to you then.
Oh, you heard him. Marvel DC, you heard him. Let's talk.
And if it doesn't happen, I'm holding you personally responsible.
All
three
you,
of you
Phil.
are personally responsible.
Well, Phil, we better get on it.
I know. All right. Any other questions for this man, or should we let him go? He's working on 5 projects at once.
One last hot take that you have to settle. Okay. Some people, well, it's a chronic take online. The difference between the Avengers and Justice League is that Avengers are co-workers. Justice League is family. Agree or disagree?
Avengers.
I'm settling it now, Phil.
Subtle distinction. First of all, you know, I think it depends. You know, you look at the dynamics of certain characters in the Avengers and their family. You look at certain people in the Justice League and their co-workers. You know, I don't think you can make that distinction. I think that's a false distinction. How's that? I think within each group you'll find both things. You'll find characters that are in there because they're working together and they would never want to be friends. And then you find Wonder Man and the Beast in the Avengers, who are sort of the Beetle and Booster of that team in a way, you know? So I think it works both ways. And sometimes I think of, you know, those classic characters, the original Justice League back in the 60s, they felt a little more like co-workers. You know, we have our lives and we come together and we fight, you know, Despero, whatever, and then we go home. You know, it's like a job. You clock in and you clock out. Our Justice League was, you know, even the people that hated each other kind of loved each other.
A dysfunctional family.
Yes, and very well, as most of them are.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
All right, yeah, like I said, yes, thank you so much, sir, for your time. We'll let you go.
No, pleasure. It's always great talking to you guys.
Anything?
I look forward to talking to you about the.
Excellent. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Stuff. Anything you want to promote? Anything you can talk about that you want to promote?
You know, most of the things that I want to promote, I can't talk about. I have like 5 new CreatorOwned books coming up. I have a novella that I wrote that should be out in the world, I think, in the next few months, but I can't talk about it just yet. I have a new project from starring that I can't talk about right now. And you know, so there's a lot. I'm really, really busy right now. I just can't tell you about anything except for, you know, I'll plug Ben Reilly. And the other thing I'll plug for those who are interested is, you know, I do these workshops, Imagination 101, but I haven't done one in about a year or so. But I also have something called what is it called? I have a story consultation business. I think it's called Creation Point Story Consultation. I can't remember the name of my own business. I'm sorry. But if you go to my website, jmdmatthias.com, and look under story consultation, what I do is I work with writers one-on-one comic book stuff, on screenplays, on prose, and I really, really love it. Writers come to me with their stuff, and I help them peel it apart and put it back together and find the best way to tell their story. And it's great. Hopefully they learn, and the fun is I get to learn too in the process. So if anyone's interested in that, you can go to my website and look that up. And then once the workshops get up and running again, there'll be updates on the website as well.
So basically, go to the website, go to the social media. I'll put something in the show notes. Yeah.
Okay. Great.
All right. Thank you, sir. Again,
all right. Yeah. Thank you.
You are a busy man.
Pleasure.
Yes.
All right. Well, we'll talk again, I'm sure.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, as long as you're willing to talk, I will hit you up. Yes. Thank you, sir.
Take good care.
You too. Bye. All right. So, Will.
Oh, wait. Are we still recording?
Yes.
I wanted to show Will the...
Oh. Nice.
I haven't opened it yet. I'm saving it for your show. So.
Okay.
Nice.
Awesome. Very awesome.
Oh, yeah. But so, hey, Will, how much of a slacker do you feel like? I mean, imagine doing your one book. Multiply that times 5.
Yeah, exactly. I am a total slacker.
My God.
He's just an amazing
Come
writer.
on, we're waiting on you to spin out a team book out of your current one now.
You think we don't sleep. That man cannot be sleeping.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, and I as we were talking, I realized that, wait a minute, didn't he write that Marvel team up? He did. So I double checked it, and I'm like, that one-off story has stayed with me for, 40 years.
Name a Marvel or DC book, he's probably written at least one issue of it. Mm-hmm. Literally, yeah. I'm telling you, go to his bibliography. It's just scrolling, and you'll be like, oh, hey, that's right, he did write that. Oh, yeah, he did write that.
Well, and I wasn't sure. I couldn't remember. Did he write an episode of the Green Lantern animated series?
More than likely. You could look, though.
I wasn't sure, so I didn't bring it up. But, I kind of have a great love of that series as well.
Oh, I wonder why.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Because he, of course, loves Hal Jordan.
Of course.
Of course. Hold on. Yeah.
I, of course, love Hal Jordan.
There we go.
I'm looking here. Justice League Unlimited. I'm not seeing Green Lantern. That's a surprise.
Okay.
That's shocking, actually.
Holy crap.
He did Ben 10 and not Green Lantern.
Ben 10, Lilith. He did 3 episodes of Teen Titans Go.
Yeah.
I knew that.
I know, but I mean, that just surprises me more than anything. I don't know why.
I don't like Teen Titans Go, but it's a good show. It's just not, I prefer the other Teen Titans show. That's all. It's different.
Speaking of the Teen Titans show, I have not watched the latest episode, but they actually bring in Green Lantern, the animated series continuity with razors, from what I understand.
Oh, Young Justice. Yeah.
Young Justice, sorry, yeah.
I haven't watched...
don't you ever get those two mixed up!
I haven't watched the last 1 or 2, but yeah, I did see they're bringing that in. Oh man, he did a Twilight Zone?
Cool.
The Girl I Married.
Oh God.
But yeah, he said that he did those those DC direct-to-video movies. Yeah, Deathstroke, Night and Dragons, Superman Red Sun, Constantine, City of Demons, Justice League Dark.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Red Sun.
That's right.
We had him on.
We did talk to him about that. Yeah.
He's shown up so many times. It's so hard to keep it straight.
Batman vs. Robin and Batman Bad Blood, because of course I love Dick Grayson.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. That's actually the best one out of the bunch, if we're gonna be honest.
Oh yeah.
Out of that Batman, DC, whatever they wanted to call it, that little pocket bubble of, Bad Blood was the best one.
And he did 8 episodes of Batman Brave and the Bold.
Outrageous!
Did he do because I watched some of Brave and the Bold. The boys were...
Oh, you gotta watch it all, buddy. It's great.
The boys were a little bit older, so we only watched a little bit of it, and then they were doing other things. But Aquaman in Brave and the Bold is freaking awesome.
Yes. Ted McGinty is my... Ted McGinty for Aquaman. Sorry, Jason Momoa. You want an old, tethered freaking Aquaman, Ted McGinty.
Of course he did an episode called The Eyes of Despero.
I mean, how could you not?
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, just scroll through his bibliography, Will. You'll see,
That's a whole day. That's a whole day scrolling.
Or if you try to read all that, that's going to be
That's a lifetime, actually.
Yeah.
Where is his bibliography?
If you go to his Wikipedia, just go.
Wikipedia.
Yeah, just look up JM DeMatteis Wikipedia. Yeah, Again, I'm on my phone. I'm on my phone. I'm still scrolling. Yeah. I don't know where, and I don't know when, I don't know how, but Lilith Hellfire, I want to talk to him about those last couple issues of the original Ghost Rider series.
Oh, you and Charlie can do that.
Okay. Oh, well, Ghost Rider's not really Johnny Blaze was never really an Avenger. Technically everyone's been an Avenger.
Exactly, like you told me, technically.
True. But just him writing the King of the Petty Zarathos, I mean, oh my god. You know I want to talk to him about
that we found Phil's life, a spirit guide.
And those last couple issues of the original Ghost Rider series. Zarathos is just so petty. Johnny Blaze is like, here, come on, save somebody. Why did this SOB call me out here? How dare he?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's amazing. He was writing early 80s to now. He's still producing great work,
Again, he's still doing 5 things at once.
Yeah.
Yeah, Phil and I were just talking about the difference. Like, as much as I love, like, the younger creators, like, there's nothing like those kind of, like, old school writers who grew up on the 60s writers and then went on to write and got to actually work with their heroes. Like, it's just a different breed.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. And like I said, I knew I wanted to talk to him about Justice League, especially once we started this show, because it's like, I think it was the last time we talked, he was like, oh, yeah, he's like, I love Justice League since I was a kid.
Well, and his and Keith's Justice League was
it's
a
my
big
Justice
deal.
League. Like, I don't, like, the Big Seven, you can have it for animated, but, like, actually, like, book-wise, it was, like, the most interesting, most different thing you could ever get out of the Justice League.
And again, you don't even have to mention Justice League. All you say is JMD DeMatteis, and eventually everyone's always like, oh, hey, that Justice League run.
One punch.
Yeah.
It's either Spider-Man or Justice League.
Exactly, yes.
Well, and I remember, I mean, Kraven's Last Hunt hit me, probably 18, 17 or 18. I mean, it was just so different, and the fact
psychological,
and it brought in, I mean, we're talking, bringing in poetry from, William Blake. Yes, I'm an English geek. I'm sorry. And
somebody's got to class this joint up, Will. It's fine.
Okay.
And again, too, I mean, because he's a smart writer too. It's not like Will says in 15 pages they fight. Yeah, no.
I mean, well, and look at his. I've just read the first 12 issues of his Spectre series, and
I don't like Hal Jordan, but I love Spectre. I love that Spectre run specifically. So.
Well, I mean, it's about redemption, and it's so good, and plus you have great art, with. He had P. Craig Russell show up. He had, Ryan Sook is doing the art. And then, I had forgotten that Norm Brayfogle shows up, and that's another artist that we lost too soon. A great Batman artist, just a great artist in general. But yeah, it's pretty amazing.
But yeah, just all the stuff they spun out of, like he was saying, all this out of that Justice League were on the quarter.
5 years of just nothing but Justice. That's a dream.
That quarterly book. I mean,
I have all the quarterlies too. That's the interest. I just actually got all of them. I just finished that collection. Gotta come down to Florida and peruse my guy's comic book shop, Phil. You gotta come down.
I know. If I try,
I'll even take you to the bigger one that's in Tampa.
I need it bigger.
This is where we finally learned that her favorite Green Lantern is Nort.
Right?
Shh, don't spoil it.
I think this is the one where we learn it's pronounced Nort, because we've been calling him Good Nort, I believe.
Yeah.
The G is silent, idiot.
Oh, sorry.
He gives me his...
But yeah, just like he said, they spun a Martian Manhunter out of that thing. He did like 2 different runs of Dr. Fate.
Honestly, that's what we should be petitioning for. We were like, DeMatteis needs to write a modern day Martian Manhunter book, please and thank you.
If anyone could give us a popular, high selling,
Supergirl proved we could actually have a Martian Manhunter interesting TV show. Like he was the best thing about Supergirl. I'm gonna be real with you. I'm sorry.
Seriously, if you want a guy who could write a comic for Martian Manhunter and a TV show at the same time, that would be the guy to go to.
And animation.
Make Martian Manhunter a thing, please.
Seriously, he could. That's what
since Superman's stuck being married to Lois in the TV show.
I mean, I know it's a dumpster fire over there, like Mark Waid said, but it's like, back the money truck.
He knows how to navigate, because DC, let's be honest, DC's been a dumpster fire for a while.
But, I mean, I don't care. Whoever's in charge over there, back the money truck up to DeMatteis. Yeah, he can make Martian Manhunter a big thing now, Especially since Superman's been suffering the last, couple of years. There's a slot there, Yeah.
Well, do you, the Ostrander Mandrake Martian Manhunter series is...
that's really good, too.
That's a really good series.
But again, that one was gone too soon. Every single Martian Manhunter series has been gone too soon. I'm just going to be real with you.
Oh, yeah. But again,
just like Quasar. Just like Quasar.
Exactly.
There's the eye roll I was waiting for.
But that's the thing, you know. If you
everybody loves somebody, it's fine.
Everybody. Martian Manhunter, especially these days, can represent everyone even more than Superman. You know, Superman looks like a white guy. You know, Martian Manhunter can be there for everybody.
He actually chose to be a black guy, so that's something. I'm just saying, no, like he came to Earth and chose to be a black guy. Like
after a while, hey, if you take all the continuity as canon, and be like, yeah, he started as a white guy. He's like, that's not for me, and then yes, he became a black guy. Yeah. All right. So, anything else?
On that note, we should let Will get back to sleep.
Let him get his breakfast.
Such a trooper.
That's right.
It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Let's get Will get his breakfast. Oh, well, that's right.
I'm going out to brunch after this. No shade.
Oh, no, I'm just saying. I had you up at 10 a.m. Yeah, Will just probably got up 5 minutes before we started. Although you're a time zone behind us, I forgive you.
That's true. It was just 11. I'm like, wait a minute, I need to check on that. And it was like 2 minutes till. I went, oh, okay, I gotta get.
I know. I was like, I told Lilith. I said, oh, I hope he didn't sleep in.
Oh, love your shirt, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
what shirt are you wearing today, Phil? Capes? Oh, okay.
Batman. My favorite character.
T-shirt check.
Please, Lilith, who do you think I'm wearing?
Batman. My favorite character.
Thanks. Sorry, Ray.
All to do with Batman. That's the best part of the drop.
I know. Sorry, Will. Almost missed you there. Or Ray. I'm sorry. I almost missed you. Don't worry. We got you. All right. So yes, kids. Next week we're doing those. Do All-Star Squadron 25 and 26 and Annual number 2. Another arc off the Lilith Hellfire list. I know. Lilith.
Phil, when are you gonna get your list? Are you just cruising out? I gave you 50 issues.
Hey,
I don't remember.
Hey, the JLA stuff, that was me, because I was like, hey, we're getting there on Sector 2814, let's do crossover. All right. Oh, you know what? Hey, Will, I'm going to have to talk to you. We might have to find something else for Green Lantern episode 100, because I'm thinking now that we're starting an Avengers show, we might have to do that JLA Avengers crossover between this show and event. Oh, bring Charlie. You just got to get Charlie S. for the books. But anyway.
Arg.
Classic crossover.
But of course you would be invited, Will.
Yeah, and that was, what did that come out like?
Early 2000s, wasn't it?
Was it that, or was it
piss
still...
poor broke?
I think it was...
It was somewhere in that decade, wasn't it?
Was it like late 90s, maybe even?
I
don't know how to look it up.
I mean, maybe if it was 99, but I was pretty sure it was early 2000s.
You may be right. You're probably right. I have no context.
I want to say 2001 or something like that. That's what I'm leaning towards.
That's what I was thinking. Watch, I'm searching it. Watch, all the current printing will come up. 2000, late 2003 and early 2004.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
The early 2000s were a blur. I was in college.
And I mean, and as we've talked about before, Lilith, it's like no shade, but like, you know, some writer or some artists, you know, you can tell their style evolves and stuff. Man, Perez, how many decades was he drawn? And he's that quality, like he always came with his A game.
I think he came out of the womb drawing. I'm pretty sure he was drawing on his mother's walls.
He had to have been drawn, since an early age. Because I mean,
he got his first work in the 70s.
I know, right? And then it's like the early 2000s, and he's still bringing his A game. It's like, wow.
Yeah, and he's still a comic artist rock star when he's doing the Avengers. 25 years later. I mean, nobody.
Like I said, they're built different. They don't make them like this anymore. They're just built different.
I mean, some come close, but I don't think anyone touches him. On those got to draw 100 characters. Crisis. He literally drew everyone in the DC universe in 12 issues.
Yes.
And it looked good.
Looked great. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's,
I love him because he draws a very fantastic woman. So.
Oh, yeah.
Wonder Woman.
That's my classic Wonder Woman.
Again, he's like the artist version of DeMatteis. I don't think there isn't a Marvel or DC character he hasn't drawn.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're correct on that.
Because he was like every couple of years, like, "Here, come draw this guy." Okay.
Well, it's the kind of the superstars of the '80s. You look at John Byrne, George Perez, Walter Simonson, Frank Miller.
Begrudgingly.
I mean, they're those really kind of rare unicorns that can write and draw, and they've been doing it.
For decades
at this point. I mean, it's amazing. And then when even if they're not writing the book, Perez and Busiek were, it was a
collaboration.
On that book. It was just so amazing. Those Avengers. I mean, I'm an old school Avengers fan, but I loved the Avengers Rebirth stuff that they did.
After Heroes Reborn. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Avengers Return. Sorry,
I said after Lilith, not during.
I know, it's just the fact that you said it. Just
I have traveled the comics world in person and on the internet, and I cannot find one person who loves Heroes Reborn. Don't worry, Lilith.
Exactly. It's a couple of stories. No, I'm like, I don't know.
I can't even fake that. Sorry,
I told you if we ever cover that, we're covering that as a complete gag. It's gonna be like, look at this crap, Rob Liefeld.
Who said this was okay?
Captain America and his giant breasts, come on, and tiny feet.
It was.
He was supposed to be a woman. It's fine.
Oh,
it was what it was. I mean, the people making those books were doing the best they could.
Never go full image.
Yeah.
Never go full 90s image. No.
Yeah.
I mean, we had Jim Lee draw on the Fantastic Four.
Oh yeah.
Which was, looked amazing.
It was pretty, yeah.
It's like you wasted it on the Fantastic Four.
He did. Well, he did Fantastic Four and Iron Man, right? I mean, yeah. Jim Lee's books look.
Iron Man makes sense, but him from Fantastic Four, I was like, it looks great, but it's distracting from the story.
It looked pretty. Yeah, I'm not going to say anything about the story, but yeah, it looked pretty.
Iron Man had Portasio.
Yeah.
Had him on Iron Man for a little bit. You had the giant Hulk in there too. So
yeah, I think it was
go big or go home.
Was that mullet? Was that mullet Hulk?
I can't remember.
Oh my God, kids! Yes, at a certain point in the '90s, we had two Hulks. Yes, two green Hulks running around.
Well, one in the Pocket Universe.
Yes, and one in the regular Hulk, because Hulk has his own book. So we kind of split Banner and Hulk.
Yeah, it was
as you do.
As you do.
Poor Peter.
Eventually, it has to come to that point when you have a character like that.
Yeah.
The Dr. Hyde, Mr. Jekyll thing.
Oh yeah. But again,
it always gets to that point, no matter who you are.
But again, it was all event driven. It's like, oh hey, poor Peter David. Here, yeah, keep writing the Hulk book, but we're going to take Bruce Banner out. You get to keep the Hulk, but we're going to take Banner over.
I mean, honestly, that's the best option. Let's be real. Bruce is a little boring.
You're talking about King of the Petty, Lilith. Oh, he was writing Hulk as King of the Petty for that year when there was no Banner. I'm gonna take over an island. Screw you.
Wow, I have forgotten a lot of those issues.
I cannot. It's my curse.
Your curse.
I can't even let down this green screen because of how many short boxes are back here. So.
Just shove them under your couch cushions like Charlie Esser.
Yeah.
That monster.
Pearls.
That monster.
Like my name is Martha.
Oh my. Why'd you say that name? Why'd you say that name? All right. Let's get out of here. All right. So, yes, kids. 2 great interviews in a row. Hey, man, this is the 3rd episode of Unlimited Justice Will's been on, man. I think we found our reserve member, Lilith Hellfire.
Indeed. Although, Kristen, we'll get her, too.
I know.
I'm afraid of killer penguins, though, so I don't know how useful I'm going to be.
No, you'll be like Unlimited Justice Reserve member. You'll have 1 episode, but there'll be 50 other people in it.
Okay.
Keep your signal device handy. Yes. All right, kids. So, yeah. Send your thoughts. And again, next week, All-Star. Hey, we're finally going to get back to a regular episode, Lilith. All-Star Squadron 25.
I don't mind the interviews because they've been so great. And
I know.
You again, Gelman. You're the best producer a girl could ever ask for.
And I don't do this on purpose, but it always seems like when it rains, it pours, or there's nothing. It's either like, if I get one interview, we got like 2 or 3 at a time. If not, other times,
feast or famine!
Exactly. But again, Mark Waid, James DeMatteis, I'm not complaining. All right, so yes.
Awesome.
Hey, if you're a creator and you want to talk to us, email us, CapesandLunatics@gmail.com, or call the voicemail, 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES. And remember, you can follow Unlimited Justice on Facebook,
get some!
On Twitter, or any of the many shows we do, like the new rivalry that'll be taking place between this show and Avengers Declassified.
I thought you were going to go for Avengers Academy, but okay.
No. Charlie Yes or No young man.
Because he's a professor. Get it?
Oh, where were you?
Missed opportunity. He's like, where were you in the workshop meeting, Lilith?
Where were you in the middle of the night when I'm coming up with this stuff, Lilith Hellfire?
Sleeping, drunk. One of the two.
One causes the other. Yes. Find links to all the social media, the YouTube channel. Again, all these interviews will go up on YouTube. So smash that subscribe button so you never miss any of them.
Smash it.
And of course, the Patreon. Again, we're out here on our own. We're not rich billionaires like Batman.
We're trying to create a league of our own. Can you some of it?
So, of course, yes. Subscribe to the Patreon. Again, early access to the creator interviews. Mr. DG Chichester every month.
I got the good mic out for you guys.
And, of course, superhero movie brackets. We will find the worst superhero movie of all time. April will crown a Marvel winner, and May will start with the DC movies. And, of course, yes, Lilith Hellfire. Get yourself some Capes and Lunatics and Capes and Lunatics Sidekicks merch. Find everything at linktree, linktr.ee/capesandlunatics. All right. To our guest, Mr. William Allred, creator in his own right, even though he only does one book. Where can people find you?
Not even close to the caliber of our guest, but you can find me at Wallred. That's at WALLRED on Gmail and Twitter and Facebook and other social media that I've probably forgotten that I've created. You can find my self-published book, Crossover Division, at crossoverdivision.com. We'll be launching issue 4 in late May, so you can go there and sign up to get notified when we launch. You can also check out Diary of Night at diaryofnight.com. And I host this really awesome Green Lantern show with this really cool dude,
Matt Coda.
Phil.
Oh, hey, yeah.
Phil. There we go. Phil. Called Sector 2814, and I co-host a show called Explain Yourself with writer Kevin Joseph, where we talk about current Kickstarters that are running from comic creators, and we bring the creators on to explain themselves.
And subscribe now, because it sounds like DeMatteis is going to be on there eventually. So
eventually, you may be on there, yeah. And then finally, if you obviously have good taste because you're watching us right now, which means you love Quasar. Shush, Lilith.
It's a good podcast. Very informative. No, very hilarious.
He's got the system down. Quasar, shut up, Lilith. All right, yes.
You can check out all kinds of cool stuff about Quasar at the Quantum Zone, quantumzone.org.
I, of course, love Hal Jordan.
I was going to say, yeah, if you like Hal Jordan, you're probably going to like Quasar. Like, it's a circle.
There he is.
The Venn diagram's a circle.
Two completely different characters.
I hope it's going somewhere nice. Hey, boys, you look at the party. I love the party.
Lilith Hellfire.
Oh, well, if you guys want to hang out with me on the interwebs and find out what I'm nerding out about, find me on Twitter at Lilith Hellfire, on Instagram at Lilith Hellfire69, and of course on TikTok making comments, not content, at Lilith Hellfire69. Either do the 6 or do the 9. 500 people just follow me for my comments, so you know. Put it here. Somebody's muffin's getting buttered. That ain't my business. That's not my business.
I don't want to say she's a nerd, but she goes to the comic shop either two to 3 times a week, kids. So
Wednesdays, Saturdays, sometimes Sundays.
She's just a warrior. Not a Wednesday warrior. She's just a warrior.
You know, if that hangover's not bad on Sunday, she'll go back to the store on Sunday. All right, kids. Thank you for joining us. Again, All-Star Squadron next week. Don't worry. We'll wrestle this Will Allred back here at some point. So,
how do you feel about Alan Scott?
Wood, Jerry. Wood. All right, kids. Come back. Get yourself some justice.
Unlimited justice.